I'll go ahead with introductions. Okay, good. Here we go. All right, good afternoon and thanks for joining our webinar. I'm Glennis McClure, Extension Educator and Farm and Ranch Management Analyst with the Center for Ag Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Today is part of our center's weekly webinar series, which usually happens every Thursday at noon Central. A full schedule is available on our website, cap.unl.edu. Today's webinar is brought to you by Nebraska's Land Link program, which works to connect land seekers with landowners who are retiring and looking to find successors. Land seeker and landowner applicants are matched with the most compatible counterparts so that a mutually beneficial partnership can be forged over the course of the transition plan. More information about the program is available at cap.unl.edu/landlink. Establishing a good risk management culture is one of the keys to success in business. This is especially true for beginning farmers with modest equity positions and high input costs. In this webinar, we will discuss the principles of using enterprise budgeting to establish cost of production. We will explore how to use this information in a good risk management culture to effectively manage risk and provide a brief overview of new enterprise budgeting resources that we've got available. So we're joined now by Dr. Jay Parsons, an Extension Farm and Ranch Management Specialist and Professor with the Center for Ag Profitability. Good afternoon, Jay.
Sorry, it switched screens on me. Good afternoon, Glenn.
Hi there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint okay?
Yes, it looks. Well, go ahead and hit the, yep, there you go.
Is that the right one? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks. So let's go ahead and get started looking at this cost of production information and using it in a good risk management culture. So, of course, this is getting a lot of attention these days because we've seen a lot of volatility in input costs. We've seen a lot of volatility in the output prices. We've seen weather issues. So there's definitely a lot of uncertainty these days when it comes to cost of production, and of course risk management comes to people's mind in these situations. So let me start with just a layman's definition of risk. My risk in 5 words definition, and that is that risk is uncertainty that matters. It's important that it actually matters because there's a lot of things going on in the world, that might grab your attention, and a lot of uncertainty out there. For example, like the war in Ukraine and so on. But the reason that matters, the war in Ukraine in particular, is because it actually has a huge impact on commodity markets, and so that's why you would care about that. So something matters, or uncertainty matters, when it affects what you are trying to achieve. So keep that in mind in this information age where we have our phones with us and we hear the news all the time, and a lot of things bounce up, is that we really want to focus on those uncertainties that actually come through and impact our ability to achieve the goals and objectives that we have in our operation. So with that, I think it's really important to keep risk at the forefront, or managing risk at the forefront, and recognizing it as a part of what you do. And so recently I put out a Center for Ag Profitability article in which I listed these 5 key principles of a good risk management culture. So let me just take a moment to go through those, and then we'll look at them in the context of an enterprise budget, and then I'll turn the time over to Glennis. So these are the things that I think are really important for people to have within their operation if they want to be good at managing risk. And the first one is the ability to anticipate decisions. And that might seem like a pipe dream in some cases, but we've all been there and done that, where we've seen things happen and we recognize situations developing. And when we do that and have that type of awareness, we're much better, of course, at handling those risks and uncertainties that develop. The second one is to have adequate resources and capacity to respond to those changing conditions. Of course, if we don't have the capacity to respond, it's hard to do much with that information and those decisions that we anticipate. And you might initially think of this as, having extra cash in the bank and extra equipment and land and so on, basically investment in your operation. But this is largely about people and having people capacity, where everybody and that's where the culture comes in. But everybody in the operation is basically has an awareness, and they have the ability to respond to changing conditions and help you push through some of those uncertainties. The third one is probably the most critical one of these, that if I had to pick one to focus on, and that would be the free flow of information into and throughout the organization. Of course, when there's a lot of uncertainty out there, part of risk management is gathering the latest and greatest and most accurate information that we can. That would be information flowing into your operation. And of course, we all do that on a regular basis, but there's only, so many hours in the day to do that. So we want to do that very efficiently too. But then it also needs to flow throughout the organization. And this is part of the culture deal and part of the people. And that is that that information transfers, it's not just withheld or held within you as the manager of the operation, but that other people are aware of those things. So for example, people that are out looking at, say, a cornfield or something, and they recognize that something's just not right, and they take a look at it, and they're wondering about it. They don't just walk away with that information and keep it to themselves. They share that with other people. So another employee, or maybe they're on the same property baling hay a week later or whatever, and is aware of that, and they see something too, and they hop out of the tractor and take a look at it. That's what we mean by free flow of information into and throughout the organization. Helps you be aware of things, and again, anticipate those decisions and be prepared for them when the time comes to pull the trigger on them. And then the fourth one, of course, is all this information is of limited use if you're not willing to learn and adapt to those changing conditions. If you're doing 1 through 4 really well, the fifth one kind of comes with it. But I'm really adamant on this one because in my mind, risk management needs to be embedded in all your decision-making processes. You need to be thinking about it up front. What typically see, especially when it comes to enterprise budgets, is people do a lot of work putting numbers in a budget to see what their cost of production is. And they're putting everything in there as if it's all known, and not giving a lot of thought to the uncertainties around them initially, other than they were trying to figure out what number to plug in there. And then at the end, somebody might say, well, what about, the price of fuel, the price of seed or whatever, or your yield or something like that. And so then you start playing what if games and see how that affects it. That would be just a good old sensitivity analysis at the end of the story. But I think it's really important to embed risk management all the way through the process of deciding what to grow and how to grow it. So you recognize those places where there are uncertainties, and you also recognize places and opportunities to maybe alleviate some of that uncertainty or protect yourself against potentially bad things that could raise your cost of production. So these are the 5 principles, and let's go ahead and take a look at an actual budget now, and I'll talk about those a little bit in that context. So this is one of our 2022 budgets. This is a budget for corn. It's gravity irrigated. And this is actually in our old system, which was done in Excel. And this is the PDF version of that. So this, if you go online and wanted to grab one of our budgets for 2022, this is the format that you would see. Glennis is going to show you an upgrade that we have available online now with our Ag Budget Calculator. That really ramps up the usefulness of these budgets that we put out. I'm breaking this up into 3 big chunks. The top chunk is operations. The middle chunk is the inputs that go into those operations. And then the third chunk at the bottom is management. And I'll take a minute or so on each of them to discuss them in more details. But this would be your basic layout for a enterprise budget for a crop in particular. Some of them, and in our new budgets, we do put a revenue section up at the top. And in the old budgets here, we finish with the cost of production. For our new budgets with the revenue budget up there, we not only show the cost of production, but then of course with the revenue in, we can show the net returns on a per acre basis for you. So those are the big chunks. Let's take a look at the operations budget first. Up at the top, this is what it actually takes to grow the crop. So these are running equipment across. You'll see that some of these are actually custom operations, like we see here, all the spraying operations, 6, 7, and 8 are all hired out as custom. So those will show up in our input costs down below. Same with the trucking and the drying. But for the most part, this is hooking up equipment and running it across the field to actually complete an operation. And as you go across and look at the actual expenses, we start with the variable costs attached and cash in particular. So you're paying for labor, paying for fuel. There's repairs attached to the equipment that you're using. And you'll notice that adds up to a big chunk of the total. So roughly about 75% or 3/4 of this $242 an acre wrapped up with running equipment across and irrigating in this case, because irrigation is a big part of this. About 3/4 of that is basically cash that you're going to be spending either on labor, fuel, or repairs on the equipment. And then the last chunk over here would a little more fixed in terms of the ownership costs on that equipment. So this would be things like depreciation, interest, or opportunity costs in that equipment if you own it free and clear, and then taxes and stuff like that, property taxes and things like that, that would be attached to that equipment and not necessarily go away if you decided not to use it for a particular operation. So those would be your non-cash expenses, and then make up the rest of that, another $56 on it. So a couple of comments here. One of them is just a comment on new and beginning producers. I get this question a lot. They ask me basically, what to do first in terms of investment. Do I go buy equipment and rent land? Do I look to buy land and find a way to use the parents' or grandparents' equipment or something like that? Keep in mind that if you own land, appreciates if you own it, equipment depreciates if you own it. And so if you look at, for example, a situation where a young producer, perhaps we're going to have a corn enterprise, and they had the opportunity, say, to use a parent's equipment to do it, they would still have the labor and the fuel expenses attached to what they're doing, and that's fairly significant. But they would basically be using equipment, and depending on how the repairs are handled, but the ownership costs in that equipment all be coming from their parents. Now, of course, that doesn't mean their parents are going to allow them to use it free and clear with no expenses attached to it. But at the same token, there's ways for young producers to get involved with the help of a parent. And if a young producer asks me whether I should go buy a $400,000 combine or go put $400,000 into property, I would choose the latter myself. I would find a way to make the other stuff work, even if it's having to hire it custom done for a few years. But those are things to keep in mind there as a young producer, and you look at these enterprise budgets and how you're perhaps going to make it work. The other thing, and it probably jumped out at you when I first popped this up, was $2.82 fuel. That's awful low. That was back when we did these, and of course we've seen that, in the heat of the planting season, it was almost twice that, probably twice that. But that's where some of that uncertainty comes into play. And as you're doing these budgets and thinking through some of these costs, it's important to think about the different things that can affect those costs and actually drive up your cost of production. So this would be the what it costs to take the equipment across the land. We also have materials and services. This would be your inputs into all of those operations. And of course, here we've seen a lot of different stuff throughout the year where fertilizer costs were double, or in some case 3 times what they would be, or in normal years, last 3 or 4 years average. But in any regards, there's a significant amount of cash costs attached to all of the inputs. When it comes to a good risk management culture, this is this part that really helps people to be aware of, what these things cost, so that you're doing this efficiently and accurately, and that it's actually needed. You'll notice the acres applied here. Not all of them are 100%. That means a lot of times you don't always have to do this on all of your acres. That's where the crop scouting and just the awareness on your operation, realizing whether or not you need to do this is super important, and that you're aware of those changing conditions and stay on top of it. Maybe you're able to jump on something early and not use a more expensive spray or more spray or something like that to actually handle it. But that's where that really comes into play and is really important. Okay, and then the last section is the management section. And for that, this is all kind of a catch-all for all the interest costs and the overhead and the land costs that we have there. But so in any regards, these are you see the land in here at $6,000 an acre. Some folks might have land that's worth a lot more than that, but in this case, we're assuming that you actually own the land, so we charge an opportunity cost of 3% on that. So this would be returns to the landowner. So if you're the owner operator of this land, that's actually a return on your investment in the land. So the bottom line expenses aren't quite as high as we say here with the cash outlay, because that would actually be returns on your investment. But from a risk standpoint, of course, there's issues in whether you're renting land or actually own the land. Of course, if you own it, you're obligated to pay taxes. If you rent it, you're obligated to pay the full rental costs that you have attached to it. And so that would, here you're close to $260 here when you think about the returns to the land and the taxes needing to be attached to it. So, and then of course on the overhead, that's, your management in-house and things that you can do there to take care of it. And then I guess the last thing I'd mention here is just the operations capital expense on that interest rate. We've seen a big increase in interest rates. Of course, that would have to play in it also. So that's just kind of a quick overview of enterprise budgets and things to think about as you put those together. And of course, think about the uncertainties attached to it, and what that would actually have an effect on your overall cost of production and maybe what you want to do there. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glennis, if I did that correct.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen for now. And can you see my full presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, we're seeing, is this the full presentation? I'm seeing ones with the slides on the side.
Okay, well, of course.
So I might need to switch.
That's always fun. Let's see. I'm going to, I'll stop share again. So I don't know. Is that better?
It's still, it's not in presentation mode.
Yeah, okay.
At least I don't think, I mean, it's got the individual slides down the side.
Yeah, I
1 through
know,
5.
and it's on my other screen, so that's always
Yeah,
fun.
you should be able, so are you in PowerPoint or were you in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If I do a view.
Yeah, it should allow you to swap monitors, I think.
Yeah, that would be good.
It's usually up at the top.
Okay, yeah, slide has custom slow show from current slide. I don't know, Ryan, use presenter view.
Well, is are you sure it's in presentation mode?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Okay,
Hit that from current slide thing.
Okay. From current slide, from beginning. Okay, here we go. Does that work?
You're not
Okay.
sharing right. You're not sharing right now. So go to your share thing and see if you can select the right monitor.
Click on slideshow.
Okay. It's not. I've got use presenter view and I don't.
Uncheck that.
Okay.
Try clicking that.
See, it's over here. I just need to switch it.
And search up there.
Okay,
Swap displays.
we'll get it. Couldn't find what we're looking for. Oh gosh. Okay. I'm just gonna escape.
Yep.
It's not doing anything there either. Oops. Oh, lovely.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Where it's not. Okay. So if I go over here to one, that should work. Correct?
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Sometimes. All right. Well, thanks for bearing with me. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you, Jay. And I really appreciated the article that you wrote on that, the culture, risk culture and so on. So it's nice to tie that in with this. But so I'm going to run through some information again that I usually present regarding our budgets. And there's just a number of reasons why we need to know our cost of production. And especially if we have a pretty good idea of our costs and we can make some marketing decisions and have some cost control perhaps, because like this last year, again, a lot of people were trying to make decisions based on, should we switch out crops based on some of our input costs and those kinds of things. And then, what does that profitability of various enterprises look like? And, even just some of our production practices and inputs. All right, so now let's hope I can get the slides to advance. All right, so I just want to mention to you all that, yes, we do have a number of enterprise budget resources in our, on our CAP website. And then also the Beef Watch folks put up information on our cattle budgets and some of our livestock budgets. And then our Crop Watch folks include our crop budgets. So they're out there, but CAP again is kind of our main place that we like to, most of our farm and ranch resources are in that website. And so this is just a picture of the screen of the cattle budgets. And so together, Dr. Parsons and some others, we've worked with some farmers and ranchers and some of our livestock, folks or livestock educators, and to put together some what we would call representative budgets. And so we've got a number of those. We tried to kind of sort of, different size herds, different locations throughout the state and that type of thing. And then there was a grad student that worked with one of our professors this last year that worked on sheep and goat budgets. So again, these are the cattle budgets right now are in the old format, in the Excel format, and then you can also pull down PDFs so you can print those. But we are planning and with our new ag budget calculator, moving our livestock budgets into that calculator. So as you consider and see what we're doing with that new calculator, keep in mind that soon we'll have livestock budgets included in that as well. I just pulled up a copy of the sheep and goat budgets because again, based on what Dr. Parsons was saying, we split those budgets out, and I've got these on several pages, although you would print it off as one page. This is a summary where we look at the variable expenses. So we've got the revenue of the ewes and the finished lambs in this case, and some wool. And then we would have the variable expenses noted and summarized throughout. And then the fixed costs also are included along with taxes. And so then in this case where we had revenue minus the total expenses, variable, fixed, and taxes, we end up with a net revenue in this example. And then oftentimes you'll see in our budgets where we have some other analysis pages, if you will. And in this case, we show a break even. And this is a per pound break even price for a finished lamb. And again, this was something that we worked with a year ago. So anytime you look at any of the university budgets, and as Jay mentioned, last year going into the 2022 seasons, we saw a lot of changes, a lot of upticks in prices and so on, costs happening. And so we develop our budgets primarily for folks to use as a guide. And throughout the year, I would go back and make a few changes in our using our ag budget calculator, or even I could do it, in an Excel file. Make a few changes and update those. But again, generally we're updating our crop budgets on an annual basis, and our livestock budgets, I would say we're probably more on like an every other year basis looking at those. All right, so, and Jay mentioned that, again, in our CAP website, we're back to the crop budgets here. We still have the old Excel format. We've got the PDF format. And then this last year, I took all of the reports that we've entered all of our budgets into the ABC program. And so I've took all those and made copies and put those PDF reports in the files, in the crop budget files as well. So now you can look at the new format of all of the crop budgets. And last year we did 84 crop budgets. And so I have a similar picture. And the reason I have this picture here is I want to mention to you, as Jay did, that we're basically taking a similar format or similar thought process, if you will, on developing and using our new ABC program. This is the old format, but what we would like for folks to think in terms as they are working with the ABC program is that they say, okay, well, this is how I grow the crop. This is the first thing I do, and it might be a burn down, and then what pesticides are used with that burn down, and so on. So as you go through and enter your information, you're doing it in kind of that sequence, okay? So this is just a picture then of with the new ABC program. You saw we had the one page Excel file for the old, and now we have budget reports that look something like this. So this happens to be a corn budget, irrigated, and so we've got again that revenue, so we could project perhaps what we think that price would be, when it goes to market. And then this is a detailed report where we can look at the seed cost, fertilizer that went in all the way down, basically first page. And then, so we've got operating costs separated out, and then we've got ownership and overhead costs, as Dr. Parsons mentioned, including like depreciation, land opportunity, equipment opportunity. Those costs are in there. So it really follows. I mean, our old budgets had a lot of this information, and we're basically just flipping those over to an online. So why would you say why did we want to go to an online format? Well, we ran into folks where they might not have been very familiar with Excel, or they were using, let's say, Google Docs. Going to an online format, we've got the calculations. We use ag engineering calculations in the background to calculate equipment costs, repairs, some fuel efficiency, especially salvage value and depreciation. And so those equations were in our Excel files, but it's a little easier to mess up an Excel file. Whereas if you've got those equations in the background of online, it's easier to do. But I think more importantly, in relationship to this webinar, is that as we've developed this ABC program, we've added, I call it bells and whistles. I add, the analysis, other informational or decision-making tools, if you will, into the program. So once you've got your base enterprise budgets done, and you can start to kind of do those what ifs, you can look at break even, sensitivity. We've got those kinds of things built into the program. So this, you might recognize this, very similar from the Excel budgets, but we have, here's a report that looks very similar. So you can look at each of those operations and the labor, fuel, repairs, depreciation, opportunity costs, similar to what we showed you with the old file format. So again, we did our budgets last fall. Normally our budgets, and we'll be working on the 2023 budgets coming up here soon. I work with crop specialists and doing some of that, and identifying prices, costs, so on, and then putting those budgets together. So we had our fall estimates, and then several times through this last year, I've gone in and will maybe increase the fuel, change the fertilizers and the chemical costs. And so like the corn budget number 23, which is a pretty sort of normal, sort of standard dry land budget, 145 bushel, we went from cash cost of 275 to 339, and I had this dated April. And then the economic costs went from 369 to 442. And economic costs for us means all costs. And so that's an important figure to look at over the long run. Hopefully you can market your grain and have that cost covered so that you can reinvest back into your equipment and cover some of those depreciation and ownership costs. So I've had some articles and some information several times throughout the year to show how some things were changing. And really, when you have, once you have those base budgets into a program like the ABC program, you can easily go in and make some updates. And we made that thing mobile friendly. So you can actually go in while you're sitting at the elevator where you're, just coming from the supplier and you see some prices have changed, you could go in and make those changes pretty easily. So here I just want to say that link is agbudget.unl.edu. That's where you can get into the ag budget calculator. And the program allows us then to, you can just create your own, you can start from scratch and do your own budgeting, or you can actually pull down university budgets that somewhat fit what you're doing, and then you can go in and customize those budgets. So again, it's web-based, mobile-friendly. All you need to do to create an account is to enter an email and then create a password, okay? So just to run through some features of that program, again, you can customize your own budgets. The budget reports show cash costs and economic costs. You can toggle between the two and take a look at that. We've added the revenue section as we've mentioned. We've got some analysis and a risk module. Then we've got a whole farm section. So one of the nice things with this new ABC program is that you could actually do enterprise budgets for multiple, let's say, farms and fields. You may have, let's say, 5 or 6 different fields of corn. You could actually do enterprise budgets for each of those fields, which might be on different farms. You might cash rent some, you might own some, those kinds of things. And then when you want to, then you can pull all your enterprises together into the whole farm section, and then work on from there to see what's my overall cost of corn production, and what does my overall net return look like if I put all of my enterprises together. So that's a really neat feature of the program. And then there we can do some more detail in entering our overhead costs and then allocating those out over our acres, and also reconcile expenses that the program calculated. Again, we use the ag engineering formulas. So it's calculating in the background kind of what your repair costs should be, your fuel costs, some of those things. And you can say, well, that's pretty close, that's great, but I'm going to change that just slightly. Or let's say, no, I'm off by about 10,000 on my normal repair costs here. So you could actually change that number and then reallocate those things. So the whole farm section has really got a lot of neat things available in it. We're working on a cash flow as a part of the program, because if you're entering all of your costs through the year, you should have a pretty good idea, or at least it'll give you a nice layout of what your cash needs are. Then you can go in and make some adjustments on cash flow. And then we're working, as we mentioned, we have revenue, but marketing plan would be another addition to the program that we're envisioning, and then some other decision tools and so on. And as I mentioned, the livestock will be a part of that. Okay, so now hopefully I can switch gears here, and let's see where we're at. Okay. Any questions at this point in time? Okay, I'm going to go live. I'm going to go into the program, and now hopefully, again, I can share my screen and make this work. Let's see here. I'll pull it up first. Okay. Okay, now, are we seeing that screen, Jay?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so now I'm actually into the program, into the Ag Budget Calculator program. And again, that's agbudget.unl.edu. And it says I'm in my account. So I've got multiple accounts working on lots of different budgets. Right now, I've got a 2022 budget year pulled up. And you can see that I've got 3 different fields of corn, dry land, a home place, that's on the East Farm, and then a home place, 2 cornfields there, one's irrigated, one's dry land. I've got soybeans, a couple different fields of soybeans, and then sugar beets, wheat, just as some examples of some variations of crops. So you can do a lot of different things with this. But as we've mentioned, using a program like this makes it pretty easy to go in and make some changes as costs change, or we want to, we look at different scenarios. So we've tried to really make this user-friendly. We've got drop downs. Here's we could just go in and start fresh and do a create enterprise. I really love the duplication features. So if I've got 1 field of corn and I do about the same thing with the second field of corn, but with a few changes, I could change the title. I can say, well, one was cash rented, one was owned. I can actually duplicate the first one that I did, and then go in and work on the second one. So again, I always tell people that if you can spend a couple hours getting familiar with it with your laptop, as you were looking at, kind of what your situation is right now, how yields change, how some of your costs change this year, you can work with it now. And then, again, you can always make some changes using mobile later. But it's just as anything is new. I think that I've had people tell me it's really intuitive. And so again, just taking time to get familiar with it, I think that you'll really appreciate it on down the road. Manage inputs. There's a lot of information behind the scenes here, but I'm going to go ahead and click on, we've got the budget year 2022 here, all right? And I'm just going to show you the annual rates. And I've got a lot of years in here. Again, I work with this program all the time. So you can, if you were just working with 2022, you just have that, okay? But I'm going to go ahead. The pencil means I can edit, or I could just actually just trash all the information in here. Well, I definitely don't want to do that. But I want to show you that this is where, first part of the year, I could say, well, I think my average, this is where we had that 282 in there for this last year. Well, maybe now all I'd have to do is change that over to, let's say, through the year, I'm figuring that diesel cost has now been more like, $4.30 on farm delivery or whatever it might be. And maybe the gasoline, if I've got a gasoline engine, it'll pull from that and so on. And that would be higher as well. Interest rates, this is where you change those interest rates. And this is that opportunity cost interest rate. So it could be 2%, you could say, or you could change it whatever you want. Let's say you're carrying your operating interest 6 months or 9 months, you could change those things there too. So that if once I make one change here, then in this particular situation, it'll change my cost of fuel for each of the budgets, okay? So I'm not gonna do that now, but I just want to show you that's one place where we can make some changes. And again, I'm gonna go back up. I could either go here, manage inputs. I could go in and look at all my power units that I've got entered, my implements, and each time I use them, I call on those. I can look at materials and make changes in prices there, okay? Or again, we've got things across the top here. Here's that whole farm I mentioned. The university budgets are here as well. So I can take a look at all of our budgets and then just copy what works into, if I wanted to use one of them, I could copy those into my account. But over here off the side too, there's action items. So that manage inputs is over here as well. And here's that list of those. And we've got these little, where you can drop down, and I could show you that I've got these folks in as folks that work, and the different enterprises that I have. I've got dad that helps me. I just have value my time. I could look at my list of power units and so on. Here's the materials. So then if I see that, anhydrous, that price has changed. So for that year, for the latest figure, I could actually update that up or down just with a change here by clicking the pencil. So I could change that to, let's say, $1.10 or $1.30, whatever it might have been on pounds of N. And you name them and you classify them and so on. So that's easy to do. The other nice thing here is that I've got a number of I'm going to go back to the 2022 year here. And I can look and see this product, this anhydrous, was only used on this East farm, okay? I can look at the summary, and the summary just says of that product, this is what I've got in is the price, okay? But I'm going to go here to the manage enterprises. I could go back here to manage enterprises and click there, or I can click over here, a couple different places there. And see if I'm going to leave that area. I made a change and it's wondering if I wanted to save it, and I didn't want to save that in that case. But I'll go again, and I'm going to sort out that 2022 year. And then here's, again, edit. I can say that the yield, I'll just click on that so you can see it. It's 300 acres in this case on this East farm. I was figuring 160 bushel yield. It's non-irrigated. And it is a cash rented field, okay? So here's where I could say, okay, now things have been a little drier, I'm going to say, well, what would be my cost if I go from 160 bushel down to like 140 bushel? What would that do then? So if I've got my base base budget's done, and I can look at changes on that as I figure there. I'll show you another place where we can do that, and I'm just gonna save changes, even though I didn't really change anything. All right, so back to manage, or I'm just gonna hit my back button and go back to that list of enterprises. And I know I'm moving around really quick here. We have ongoing trainings on this program, so we can easily show folks how to use it and work with it and walk through it a little bit slower, in some online sessions. And we're also trying to do some in-person sessions. So if you like to learn better by being face-to-face with your computer and working with me or someone on learning this program, just keep in touch with our CAP website on those opportunities. I schedule the online ones pretty regularly, and so folks can hop on. And I also schedule Q&A sessions. So you might be working in the program and have a few questions. You can always give us a call, but you can actually get on a webinar and look at the Q&A. Okay, so I was going to show you here that I'm going to go in now, and so where this tractor, this is, and I'm hovering over it, and it says field operations, or it did. Okay, I'll just click on it. It's thinking, okay. So this is that corn enterprise and the field operations, and here's where that anhydrous was, and I did it before the first of the year, so I did it in November. That's why it's in parentheses. Those are kind of in order as to when we say we do things, okay? So like, let's say here, I could duplicate that if I wanted to do another anhydrous application here. But let's say I want to go in and change something there. This tells me who does that work. I could say which, we show which tractor is involved. You name your tractors, the information's in the background there. We've got an anhydrous applicator. And then the materials. So here's where I could go in and I could say, I'm just going to click that. And I could say, well, rather than 100 pounds of N, I'm going to put on 110. Okay, so that's one place where you could do that. And then also I could go here. Remember, I showed you that list of inputs. I could go here and also make that change if I want to. So there's multiple ways to get to things. And just simply make some changes on prices if that's what you'd like to do. Okay. So let's see. Jay, anything else that you would like for me to show them on that? Oh, I know. I'm just looking at my notes here. All right. So I'm going to go save and go back. We didn't really make any changes there again. I'm going to go back to manage enterprises. And I'm just sorting. It's just in my case, in my account, I've just got a lot of information. But let's say here I am with this particular budget. I'm going to go to, well, I'll just click on it, click on that again. And here's where we can add other expenses like our crop insurance, storage costs, some marketing costs, some of those kinds of things. In addition, these are field operations. So there's other expenses oftentimes that we have that are direct expenses to that particular budget or enterprise. And then here's our edit revenue. So I had 716 in per bushel. Let's say no, I figure I'm going to sell for 670 or so. All right. And there's some crop residue. So we can actually put in some other income if let's say we rent out the stocks at the end of the year. And then later on, if we had let's say we had some reason to collect crop insurance, we could actually add that revenue or some other revenue. Let's say there was government payments or something like that that came into play. So here I am with that corn dryland East Farm again. And we are in this revenue section, and we can get to this in another location, but I'm going to go ahead and click for you this risk analysis. Okay, and I'm leaving that area. And I don't think I actually changed the price, but that's okay. This is a module that was created to look at sort of what's a worst case scenario. I'm figuring on 160, 140 bushels, somewhere in there. And let's say I'm down here in Southeast Nebraska. We have the state divided into crop reporting districts and information behind the scenes per district. So here I just clicked on Jefferson County, which is actually in Southeast Nebraska. And this, I had figured 160 bushel, but that tells us here that in that area, we've got a NAS average, USDA NAS average of 144.1 bushel. And then we've got here some information working with Dr. Corey Walters. He looked back on some history and says in 2002 in that district, we had a regional low of 53 bushels per acre. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this and show you how that works. So say my APH is actually more like 140. I was hoping for 160, okay? Let's say rather than 53 bushel, I only end up with 100 bushel, all right? I could put in my insurance price, change that to whatever, and this would be, it tells us right here, we've got a lot of narrative in the program too, and we've got these little question marks here that are actually help messages. So there's a lot of narrative, particularly in this module, and some information. So I could change these. I could go ahead here and say, well, let's say harvest, you know, if things stay dry and we're looking at 720, but we're looking at a minus, you know, still 20-cent basis or so, or no basis at all, whatever you want to do there. So we're putting in that information now based on a disaster yield of 100 bushels per acre and the APH at 140. All right. We can select our coverage of insurance level. What did we decide early in the year? Did we go with 75%? What did we go with? So let's say we went with 75% and figured out what, with that particular yield, where we'd be with our crop insurance coverage and our revenue. So then I can look at a projected disaster report based on those changes, and let's see what happens here. Okay, so I think this is really nice. Our programmer just updated this not long ago, but here were our original projections. Again, we were using 160 bushel with all of our operating costs, net return above operating, economic costs, all right? And here's what would happen if we ended up with 100 bushel at that insurance coverage level. So, and that gives us a little summary, and then we can actually go back and look at the original report and do some sort of what ifs, okay? So I know it may seem a little complicated, but I think, again, you watch the help messages throughout. There's a lot of stuff that I think that can really be helpful here. Let's see, one thing I wanted to, so that's that. I was also going to show you, I'll go back to the year. I go back to the managed enterprise area a lot. And then again, I'm sorting out. So I've got just that year, those budgets, those original budgets I showed you there. But let's say again, I go to this report area. And when I do that, I know here again, I get that economic report. I could toggle between that and cash. But I can also, we've got over here more reports. This is where we get that field operation report, the list of materials, those kinds of things. But we have analysis also figure in. And here's that risk analysis section we just looked at. We've got a sensitivity chart, a break-even chart. We can actually take a look at a couple of our budgets that we put in and do a comparison break-even. But I'll just show you like the break-even figure here for this particular budget. So let's say this is without the crop insurance, of course, factors in, like we just looked at. But let's say our yield was, 18% less than we figured. We had a break-even projected of, we needed 517 per bushel to cover economic costs, which is our operating and ownership costs again. With a 18% less yield, we'd be at 631. Okay, if we did better by 18%, that would drop that break even to 438. We could toggle between economic, and if we just wanted to look at cash, we could do that here. Then we could also look at it, what would be the break even on the crop yield side if we change the price. Okay, so those are just some examples of what we've got going on here, and I hope that's somewhat helpful to you. Okay.
Thanks, Glennis. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. We'd be happy to address anything. Glennis, what's the biggest thing that people were asking about this last year? Was it the fertilizer stuff or fuel? or something else?
Well, again, we saw chemical costs go up too. So it was, I'll just go ahead and stop share here. So, and it was really a combination of things, but generally, I mean, we definitely saw the fuel costs go up, and then in relation, you've got your pesticides and some other things going up as well, and your fertilizer costs, and a lot of uncertainty whether they could even get some of those products or not. And so, again, I think if you can sit down and say, here's what I know, like you mentioned, here's what I know, and I can do this in this, set up this budget. And then as things change, we can kind of keep up with how those changes might be. Let's see if we have anybody in the chat. Okay. And yes, thank you, Ryan, because we do have a page, the cap.unl.edu/ABC. Tells a lot more about the program, and then that's where we put our training workshop information. And I know I'll be, we're going to probably, of course, take a little bit of a break with that as we are getting into harvest now, but definitely things will be ramping up again as we work on the new budgets for 2023. And we'll be doing some more training on the ABC program, because we'd really like for people to start to use the ABC program. And again, we're always interested in feedback, your questions, like if something isn't working right. I know we meet weekly with our developer, Dr. Parsons, and Dr. Van Tassel in our department are really on the team, along with Roger Wilson. We're on the team that is developing the program. And so we always appreciate hearing from you and your feedback and ideas on how we can actually make that work best for you. So.
Yeah, just a few things to add. And some of you probably noticed when Glennis was demonstrating it, there was a UNL budgets button over there on the right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you would grab one of our existing budgets and pull it in. And it's as simple as that. You click that button and the budgets pop up and you say, hey, I want corn budget 27, like the one I was showing you, and you click it and it comes into your account and it's all there for you to work with. So that, as Glennis mentioned, makes it a lot easier to take our budgets and modify them to fit your own situation than it was with our old Excel budgets, which you had to fish around and find all those details someplace in an Excel file, which could be a little tough. So that's one thing to really point out to people who want to make those more useful for folks. And Glennis's appeal for feedback and input, that's sincere. We really want this to be a tool that people can use to make decisions. So she showed you the risk analysis module. There's lots of things that pop into my head, but certainly we want things that producers find useful. So if there's something that you look at and say, hey, I'd really like a tool that I could pull, I don't know what it is, say your fuel in and see what your average fuel price is, as you make your different purchases or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
that we might be able to help out with, just let us know, because we definitely want to make that useful. And we don't expect everybody to use every aspect of it, but we would certainly like a large number of people to find different aspects of it very useful for making decisions on their operations. So sincere appeal for your input on things here.
Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments. So I think with that, we'll conclude, but we really want to thank everybody for taking time today to join us. And a recording of this webinar will be posted at cap.unl.edu, where you can also register for upcoming webinars. So please click the link in the chat box here to take a brief survey to provide feedback on this webinar and inform our upcoming sessions. And thank you again for joining us. Enjoy your day.